The trade deadline has come and passed for the Seattle Mariners, and they didn't do much. There's so much to talk about here in episode 19 of the Hit It Here podcast. Did the Mariners do enough at the trade deadline to make the playoffs? It's sad that Paul Sewald's not a Mariner. Did they get enough for him? But more importantly, Joe, how you doing?
I'm good, man. I'm glad you still wanted to ask how I'm doing on this day, a day of all days in 2023 Seattle Mariners history. You know, the deadline, we had a great big large stream, so appreciate everybody that tuned in for that. That was incredible. Had a shockingly a large amount of people there. We peaked at 560 viewers live, so that was really sick. So just thanks, to everyone involved in the community. Sorry that they didn't do anything very exciting
Yeah,
on the
the
final
stream
day.
itself was pretty anticlimactic, right? You're just
Hmm.
like sitting there
Waiting.
waiting. At 500 and something people waiting, we're sitting there like dancing, trying to, you know,
Keep it going.
just give something entertaining because they're not doing anything. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mariners did make one trade. Of course, we're really not gonna. We'll talk a little bit about it, but overall, what we really need to discuss is: did the Mariners do enough? Should they have sold? Should they have gone more in on buying?
Hmm.
There are a million different trains of thought, and I am not going to give Jerry Dipoto and Justin Hollander a pass on this. Don't get me wrong. I'm not going to get too upset with them, right? I'm glad they didn't trade Teoscar Hernandez for what we saw rental bats going for.
Yeah.
Like the fact that you were able to get a Tommy Pham for a complex league player,
Why would we trade Teo for that?
but in the same exact vein, why did you not trade a complex player for Tommy Pham?
Exactly. We could have easily outbid the Arizona Diamondbacks for a guy that theoretically could have been added into our offensive fold almost immediately with Tommy Pham.
And hitting in the middle of your lineup. And so there are the trade for bats. There weren't many of them. There weren't a ton of bats to go around at this trade deadline.
True.
And that shocked me a little bit. Of course, with Cody Bellinger, for example, the Cubs deciding to not sell and in fact buy,
Hmm.
that took a bat off the market. The Padres were pretty quiet. So
In terms
there
of
were
selling, the
yeah.
Padres probably had some pieces that you could have sold off if you're the Padres, but they decided to kind of retool and buy a bit. So, yeah, I think what you're saying, just kind of getting to the point about, is that there weren't a lot of premier bats on the seller's market, or, bats for people to buy. And that kind of handcuffed a lot of teams, it felt like.
Right. And I mean, the few bats that were available, like the Tommy Pham or, the Heimer Candelario
Mark
and
Canna.
Mark Canna, what have you, they didn't cost a whole lot. I mean, Candelario obviously costs the most. He's a third baseman, whatnot.
Hmm.
Canna and Pham, you're looking at or outfielders for the Mets would sell you their kidneys if they needed to right now.
Yeah.
So the options were there to make this team better offensively. That's the problem. There weren't a ton of options, and maybe who's to say that Jerry or Justin didn't call the Mets, and the Mets were just like, no, we're not dealing with you ever again. No,
Yeah. You
Robinson
never,
Cano didn't work out.
sure, you
No,
never
don't
know.
call us.
And it's not just the Mets that could have been available. Like, you could have gone to the White Sox because they sold off Berger. You could have tried to go get Gavin Sheets in that same way. There are players on these teams that are at the bottom of their divisions that you likely could have tried to go get a piece from. It's just with the way the market was looking, how are they, willing to sell off their pieces? We don't know. The Nationals have accepted not to, pretty close to major league talent for Lane Thomas. Based on what we were seeing from their reports, no. But was the market fitting that way? Also, no. So it just wasn't a right match for the Nationals to sell Lane Thomas at this deadline. It didn't feel like, to me at least.
And the interesting thing is, so the Mariners, they clearly weren't really buyers at this deadline. They
Yeah.
didn't feel that they looked at the Seattle Mariners baseball club right now, a team that is, I don't know what the standings are as of Tuesday night, but they're 3.5 games out of a wild card, tied with the New York Yankees. They just lost a game to the Red Sox, so
Hmm.
they're 3.5 out there, maybe 5.5 out in the West. Doesn't matter. They looked at that team and said, no, no, that team is not worth buying pieces for.
Yeah.
We got Dominic Canzone and we got Josh Rojas, and you're going to be happy about it. Cade Marlowe is going to be patrolling left field for you for the rest of the season, and Canzone will be DH first base outfield guy for the
Yeah.
rest of the season. Rojas will be the second baseman along with Jose Caballero, and that's the defense. Those are the offensive upgrades. And In their defense, is Cam Zone and Rojas probably an upgrade? Yeah, I'd say, but a minimal one. And you're banking on those guys to figure it out. You're banking on Rojas to bounce back. You're banking on Cam Zone to stay hot after the last few weeks, but he has been pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
You're banking on Cade Marlowe continuing to hit.
Yeah.
You're also, the way that I look at this is that Jerry Dipoto and Justin Hollander are banking on the fact that Teoscar Hernandez is going to figure it out. Ty France is going to figure it out, which he looks like he did in
Yeah.
the second game against the Red Sox.
Two doubles.
And a hard hit single as well.
Yeah.
So, and you're banking that Julio's going to be better. You're banking on these guys being the players that they've been throughout their entire career, which is fine, I think, in a vacuum.
Yeah.
However, when you look at this team thus far this year, we've been banking on that. We were banking on Colton Wong to be the guy that he's always been, banking on AJ Pollock to be the guy that he's always been, and they weren't.
Yeah.
And they weren't. And for the Mariners, why would you not go out and get someone right now like a Tommy Pham who is good right now, who fits this ball club to make your offense immediately better instead of banking and hoping that these guys figure it out?
Yeah, I think you're beating the right tune on that drum, is that we're still waiting for the guys to turn it around. We still are playing that waiting game that may never turn the corner of, oh, Teo's not going to be a below 100 WRC plus guy for the rest of the year. Ty in the same way. Gino's power stroke's going to come back, albeit, it is, he's the one that feels like it's turning the corner, but, and, Julio got on base again, extending his on base streak to 26 games, I think. So, there's things to like about it. It's just all those things falling in line. The likelihood of that, I would not want to, bet the house on it. And that's what Jerry and Justin seemingly have done by not going out and adding to the offense in a meaningful way and relying on Josh Rojas, who has had some, lingering injuries, which understandably so. Those can be nagging and harp on your baseball skills. And then Canzone, who has been a proven AAA hitter, and he's only had, what would it be now, 42 Major League at-bats. And yeah, sure, you can bank on that, and guys can come up and start hot out right out the gate. But it's never a guarantee. And I feel like going out and getting one of those bats that we've mentioned in the, couple minutes here, that would feel more like a guarantee than Rojas or Canzone, and wouldn't have cost that much in retrospect.
And when you look at the thumbnail that we made for this podcast, the word embarrassing is, just right there. And honestly, it is embarrassing that the Mariners did not try to go out and get one of these guys that make the team better right now. There's plenty of other moves that could have been made. You could still have kept Dominic Canzone and Josh Rojas on this roster and still gone and got a Tommy Pham and then either sent down Jose Caballero or whatnot. That was still there. The option is still there. Instead, you're relying on Dylan Moore, who we don't know really what is going on with his wrist right now, and Cade Marlowe to patrol left. You're basically relying on two platoons in the one in the infield, one in the outfield. You did not add. You're relying on your strength, right? Which you traded away from, by the way, by trading Paul Sewald, which, again, we talked about this a little bit before, but just one final time. I absolutely adore Paul Sewald, what he did for this team, what he did for the community. He's a reliever. At the end of the day, he pitches once every couple of days. He's been good, sure, but the Mariners are really good at this. They turned a minor leaguer in Paul Sewald, a minor league non-roster invitee to spring training, into Paul Sewald, and then they turned that into A, going to the playoffs, and B, Dominic Canzone, Ryan Bliss, and Josh Rojas.
Yeah.
And the problem is that you traded away from your strength, and you got maybe a little bit better offensively with Canzone and Rojas. It's not a guarantee.
It's marginal, yeah.
So you are relying on your pitching staff to be lights out the rest of the year, which that's how the Mariners are in this position in the first place, is the pitching staff has been so damn good. Now you got them no help. You got the pitching staff absolutely no help in terms of, hey, like, for example, Bryce Miller in the game against the Red Sox, he didn't have it.
Yeah.
It is what it is.
He was
but
flat.
It's a game that shouldn't have had to have played out that way if you just had a competent offense. And don't get me wrong, the Mariners offense looked fine in that game, but they still, Bayo struck out like 87 people. The umpire was bad.
Yeah.
But
the first inning is the big glaring issue, right? You have the bases loaded with no outs. Sure.
Yeah.
It's Canzone's first AB as a Mariner. I'm not going to over analyze that one too much. He
Yeah,
tried to
no, I
lift the
don't care.
ball, didn't get far enough out, whatever. Ty, strikeout, not great. And then was it Ford after him? I think
Yeah.
Ford had an awful game, an abysmal game 2 against Boston. I would not be surprised if tomorrow, like going forward, Canzone plays more of a DH role, and then Ford is more still like on the bench or like a reserve pinch hitter, depending if Tom Murphy's playing. But yeah, I have not liked, I guess, the Mike Ford that we're seeing in the last couple of days.
Mike Ford is regressing into the player that he's always been, which is another reason why you should have gone out and gotten players. Look, yes, the Seattle Mariners failed their fans at the trade deadline, but there's no way to really spin it in a positive light. They didn't do enough. That plain
Yeah.
and simple. No beating around the bush. The Seattle Mariners didn't do enough, and Justin Hollander and Jerry Dipoto even meant that. I think the exact quote was, "Our process was good in the offseason, but the results were bad." For the trade deadline, the process was bad. Just straight up, the
And
process
then
was bad.
we won't know that the results were good until Dom Canzone and Josh Rojas do something for us, or Ryan Bliss does something, or they don't. And yeah, the bright side is you've got, a couple years to figure that out and control with them. But if it doesn't pan out, that's definitely going to be a trade that people are going to look back on and be like, okay, that's where the regime may have gone wrong. And by the end of that time, maybe they're not in that front office position anymore.
Mm-hmm. And I will be the first to admit that, like, at the beginning of the year, I was all in on the moves they made in the offseason. I thought they did enough.
Yeah,
I really did.
I felt like Pollock felt like a sound platoon with JK. Obviously, Jared starting off hot detracts from that a little bit, and Pollock can get in a groove. So be it. If he ever did get into a groove, would he have ever looked like the lefty mashing Pollock from before? If I'm being honest, it doesn't really feel like he looked that way this year. Wong regressing to a awful career low. It's hard to predict moves like that and regression like that in that way.
It's not
And
hard to predict. It's impossible to predict.
exactly. And I guess like if now we're looking at this and maybe it's going to turn into like a talent evaluation issue with, Justin and Jerry in terms of offensive production, if Canzone and Rojas also falter in a way. It's leaving a lot of people scratching their heads, wanting more, and with more questions than answers coming out of the best month and like best July in Mariners history.
Yeah. I mean, that's a good way to look at it.
I
And then
just
going into the weakest month of the year for you.
exactly, like you could have put yourself in a way to catapult up the wild card standings soundly with good reason and logic behind those decisions to make a trade to add on, and you just didn't. And now you're just hoping that the guys do it for you. The team that you did not bet on, that you said, hey, we're going to sell a little bit of your stock here. Hopefully you guys can still figure it out. I don't know. The Sewald trade, I'm okay with it from a baseball standpoint. From a human standpoint, it feels like a slap to the face with the lack of additions that they also attempted or did not attempt to make for me.
Yeah. And that's where I think the failure comes in. The Sewald, if you do just the Sewald trade, I think that's the start of a good process.
Yeah.
The fact that you stopped there, that's where the problem lies. The fact that you did not go and continue to add is you basically wasted Paul Sewald at that
Task
point.
failed successfully. You started the task in the right way, did not finish that task how you were supposed to.
It's like half the videos I was going to make for this channel.
Exactly.
I started it. They never saw the light of day.
Never came to fruition.
So let's talk a little bit about some of the word vomit that came from the Mariners GM and their president of baseball operations. Let's start first and foremost with Jerry saying that the calls on the young starting pitchers was more smoke than fire, and they never even got to exchanging names. What do you think about that?
I don't want to be too, over the top with it, but that feels like to me.
Mm-hmm.
That does not seem accurate in the slightest, especially with the trade between the Guardians and the Rays, Savali for Manzardo, and the report being that Gilbert was the other one that was being considered by the Rays for acquiring him. That does not feel like just smoke. That feels like a bit more, a little bit more kindling, a little bit more stoking the fire there. There's coals in that bed. And I don't know. It just doesn't feel honest, which is not it's another step in the wrong direction, it would feel like. And maybe the Wu and Miller conversations would be more like smoke, especially finding out that Brendan Donovan was having season-ending surgery that we didn't really kind of foresee happening. I mean, who could have predicted that one? You know what I mean? And those ones I feel like maybe, but I feel like the Gilbert conversations, maybe not even just with the Rays, maybe the Orioles were a part of that conversation as well, with how stacked their minor league system is. That felt like a little bit more substantial than what Jerry was letting on.
And in my opinion, if let's say what Jerry's saying is true and they never even got to exchanging names, that's you did a terrible job as a general manager and
Yeah,
as a president of baseball operations. You did yourself and the baseball team a disservice by not seeing by not even exploring what's out there for these guys.
especially
Like,
seeing the returns on the final day, you could have gotten a bag for any of those guys. Not saying that we would have wanted it, in hindsight, I would have hated to see any of those three guys go. But if you can get even a similar return, a couple steps down for Emerson Hancock, who may not even figure into your rotation picture come next year if Wu and Miller stay the path and Robbie Ray returns in July and you figure out something there, where's Hancock figure? Probably better on another team and you get some value from him.
mhm.
And so
Yeah,
I just don't get it.
it's like I said, it is you. That is the one spot where I'd be like, you didn't do your job. Like, plain and simple, you did not do your job. And like you said, if it's Emerson Hancock, sure. I mean, are you going to get Monzardo for Emerson Hancock? No, but you
No,
can get, like, if you go talk to the Rays about, I don't know, their number 15 prospect, number 10 prospect, are you going to
something.
get that for Emerson Hancock? Possibly.
Hmm.
And Logan Gilbert, if you're calling the Rays and offering, they need. It seems like they would have probably started the conversation if we're talking minor leaguers. Curtis Mead
Yeah,
probably
or
would have started the
Curtis
conversation.
Mead and Monzardo definitely would have been in the circle of names that the Rays would have been offering and that Jerry and Justin should have been looking at to acquire.
Hmm. And so if they would have come out and said, hey, yeah, we got calls on Logan, we talked names and whatnot, but we just never got there. We just didn't like the packages. I'm fine with that. More than fine with that.
It feels more organic and natural and just like
Hmm.
honest if that's the case.
Because you're betting on Logan there. Like, you really are. You're betting that he's going to be better than the guys you would have got back.
100%.
But because you're saying that you didn't even exchange names, you're just saying, nah, you're not even like giving the opportunity to say, maybe I could have made this team better.
To potentially improve your ball club.
Yeah.
100%. I think the one thing that I appreciated the most out of the radio call or whatever it was, I disassociated for like an hour and a half after I ended stream. So forgive me if my interpretation of things is wrong, but the comments about Tom Murphy, they felt very genuine. They felt very keen into what I would have wanted out of the entirety of that message. And it's talking about how valuable Tom Murphy is to the club and how much he means in terms of just a clubhouse guy, but also like heart and soul of the team. In that same way, then what does that say about like your opinion about Paul Sewald for that? And I know he made comments saying like we love Paul, blah blah blah. Maybe he'll come work with us in the front office one day. If I'm seeing that comment about Tom Murphy and I'm Paul Sewald, I'm probably a little bit upset if I'm being real because that goes to show that they value that position more than yourself, or maybe it's the value is more intrinsic in the idea that you have more of a surplus in the bullpen, and maybe I'm reading too much into like the emotion sides of it, but I liked what I saw from the comments about Tom. I would love to have seen a little bit more maybe about Paul.
Hmm. And to be fair, we still could,
Sure,
see more
it's
about
yeah.
that.
The press reports definitely aren't done by any means,
Yeah.
but
And
the initial reaction for me, I was like, "Oh, that's great," but it felt like there should have been like a part two, like a
well,
secondary thing.
and Hollander did say like him and Tom are really good friends off the field, or not Tom, him and Paul are really good friends
Hmm.
off the field, and he said that it was crushing and like it was the worst
Yeah.
thing that he did that day. But
Hmm.
it's like, I don't know. I think that another thing from one of the radio things that Hollander said was, we feel like we made this team better offensively. How do you know that?
You
You
can't
don't.
guarantee it.
You can't guarantee. Is Josh Rojas any better than the platoon of Caballero and Colton Wong? It's not hard to be better, but
Hmm. I mean,
there's a
game
decent
one,
chance
0
it's
for
not.
4 or 0 for 4, right? It was an 0 for
Looked
4.
like Colton Wong up there, didn't
Yeah,
he?
no, I mean, there was a moment where he hit a ground ball, and I was like, Holden Wong could have done that. Albeit, give the guy time to settle in. We're
Right,
not we're
right,
not
right,
ready
right.
to, throw stones at him yet. But
And if you are basing, and to be fair, Canzone smashed 2 balls to the basically deepest part of the field in left field.
Yeah.
Oppo. I mean, he looked he had
comfortable at the plate,
but
not in the
not in the
outfield.
field. Oh God, no. But
Yeah.
if you are one of the idiots in our comments or the idiots on Twitter basing Dominic Canzone on his now 16 games played in the majors saying he's not a major league hitter, you're stupid.
Yeah, you got
You're
to let the
stupid.
process happen a little bit.
Imagine if we would have done that off of Julio Rodriguez.
Terrible.
First 16 games. Oh, well, may as well release him. Bad baseball player.
We need to fire our scouting department.
Just see the fat old guys sitting there with their beer bellies and their white hair. Canzone doesn't hit for a high average. Nope. Half of our viewers just unsubscribed, but that's fine.
That's
I
fine.
don't care. Good riddance. I don't know, but nonetheless, bringing this kind of full circle here, the Seattle Mariners front office did not do their job for the MLB trade deadline. That is plain and simple. There's no two ways around it. This team is not better than they were before the deadline. They're not, and you could argue if anything, they're basically right where they were. Sure, Trent Thornton came in and was decent.
His curveball or his breaking pitches he made Yu Chang slam his bat down into the earth trying to make it stick in, but yeah.
And to be honest, at this point that we're kind of getting used to that. We're kind of getting used to the Mariners picking up another team's trash and making them a great reliever.
Yeah.
So replacing Paul Sewald, again, my personal feelings about Paul aside, from a pure baseball standpoint, shouldn't be that difficult. And people are greatly overvaluing what a closer means to a baseball team. It's the fact that they did not add on top of that that's the problem.
Yeah.
We think the Paul Sewald trade was good.
Good enough.
From a pure baseball standpoint, it was good. Human standpoint, there's more to talk about there. But the fact they didn't add on to that is what we have a problem with. It's not the Paul Sewald trade. It's not the Edward Buzzardo trade.
Yeah. Speaking of, taking trash from someone and making them into a treasure for us, the superlatives on Buzzardo's stuff, I feel like rings a similar bell to Justin Topa in the offseason when we acquired him. So I would not be surprised if we just somehow managed to turn Buzzardo into another guy with a weird funky arm slot and a slider that moves 20 inches away from right-handed batters, and then a cutter that goes the opposite way. Or no, not a cutter, a two-seamer that cuts back in on those same right-handed batters. They can develop pitching. They can fix bullpen arms. It's the addition of anything else outside of those two bullpen arms. Like, all we did was trade bullpen pieces. We traded Paul Sewald, and things we got back were Trent Thornton, Buzzardo, and then two maybe offensive guys at this point that aren't clear upgrades. And I think that kind of showed in the second game in Boston. I mean, it's hard to kind of justify everything moving around because, even if you do bring in a trade that day, that guy's not going to be there to play for your team in the second game. So would it have made a difference had they acquired Tommy Pham instead? No. Would the big hit have come? Maybe not. But it's hard to really tell whether or not another move would have won them, the game on August 1st. What matters is the next games going forward. You need to win August 2nd. You need to win the series against Boston.
Yeah. And going back a little bit to the Buzzardo trade, not a whole lot to talk about here. But if you're complaining about the Buzzardo trade, you're just looking for something to be mad about.
Yeah.
That's plain and simple.
It's a nothing trade.
If you're complaining about the fact that that's the only trade they made on deadline day, then that's another story. But being mad at Edward Buzzardo and Logan Reinhart, no, you're looking for something to be complained about. But if you're, again, it's all about the process. It's completely about the process that they had for this trade deadline. Horrible. The worst process I have seen at a trade deadline in years. Plain and simple. It is terribly done by the Mariners, especially when you're literally playing teams in front of you right now with the Red Sox and the Angels. It's stupid. You already won the season series against the Blue Jays, so if you somehow end up in a tie with them, you take that spot. Yep. It makes no sense that you did not go out and add at least one offensive piece. Literally, a complex league player for Tommy Pham, we'd be having a completely different conversation. Completely different. That's all it would have taken. hell, Josh Bell got traded. He's not good, but
It's
you know,
something, right? It's
yeah, it's
something that's a
something.
major league player where that guy in the complex league isn't going to touch the major leagues for 4 years, probably.
Hmm.
Unless you're
Yeah,
Lazaro Montez and you're going to be here by 2026.
by tomorrow,
Yeah.
Lazaro Montes. But I don't know. Like the Mariners are still playing too much for tomorrow when they are very much in it in 2023. Like Joe just said,
Yeah.
this is you could have traded. You traded Logan Reinhart for Edward Bazardo. I keep wanting to call him Anthony Bastardo.
I know,
Good
man.
lord,
It's been like 8 hours.
Edward Bazardo.
Uh-huh.
That is more of a play for now because Logan Reinhart was in single A. Bazardo was pitching in the big leagues. Not a great trade. Like I don't care. I do not care one bit about that trade.
Yeah.
Then neither should anyone else. Fact of the matter, until Bazardo comes in and is pitching in the major league bullpen, don't care.
Yeah. It shouldn't matter.
So there were also rumors. One of the things that Jerry Dipoto said was that Ryan Bliss could be up with the major league club by the end of the year,
That's
which is
crazy to me.
interesting. Yeah.
I don't know if I'm on track with that. I would like to see him get developed a little bit more, I feel like, at the AAA level. Obviously, PCL, we all know, is a hitter's friendly league. Is the Reno Aces, are they in the PCL?
Yeah.
Okay. He was hitting 198 at AAA. He was mashing AA, but he was hitting below 200 at AAA. So I don't know where they're at with that development. If they're just, they're willing to take the raw talent and the skills that they saw at AA when, they've been scouting or whatever scouting reports are coming over from Arizona. I don't know. It just feels almost like a little, like too quick for me, but
Agreed. Yeah. And I mean, again, this could all just be word vomit from Jerry Dipoto to try and save
justify.
face.
Yeah.
Yeah. Save face. Oh, what do you mean? We got 3 major leaguers in that trade.
Yeah.
Smile.
Mm-hmm.
Like, no, you didn't.
Yeah.
Like, you got Josh Rojas has not really played much like a major leaguer this year. Canzone has 16 major league games.
Mm-hmm.
And Ryan Bliss probably shouldn't be in the big leagues this year. No, you didn't.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. I think that Canzone and Rojas are fine for the major league team. It's just so it'd be interesting to see Ryan Bliss at second base, especially if Rojas plays like he has been all year
Yeah. And
and
then
Caballero
Caballero.
continues to struggle. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
then sure, I guess.
Why not?
But yeah. So, do we ever hear anything about Jake Shiner?
Nothing. I don't think a single
Weird.
word about Shiner in general. I think it was probably just like a precautionary thing just in case, but
Yeah.
or maybe, yeah, I don't know. But Cutter Crawford, Logan Gilbert tomorrow, today,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Cutter Crawford's been okay this year. And last time out against the Giants, he went 5 2/3, struck out 7, only gave up 1 earned. Could the Mariners, be able to jump on him? Maybe. Maybe if Cal wants to hate on an AL East team a bit more, like he seems to have done pretty well this year. Logan Gilbert, I trust to, him to have a better outing than I would say George and Bryce Miller against this Red Sox team. George got spoiled by foul balls in game 1. It was unfortunate his pitch count just kept getting driven up. And then, Miller, I feel like just needs to work on his stamina. Loses his fastball velo. And with that, it's a lot. It's just way flat. His fastball is just so flat coming in and just gets smacked around. Just doesn't have the secondary pitches to kind of justify losing that velo right now. So Gilbert, need him big time in game 3. And then it's out to Los Angeles.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And when you look at this ball club right now, what we have is what we've got for the rest of the year.
Mm-hmm.
Like this is what you're looking at right now is the Seattle Mariners baseball club that is trying to make it to the postseason in 2023.
I think the only other change you can really say is whoever's going to be the 6th starter, essentially, to alleviate Woo's innings, if that's the case, right? If that continues, and is if Woo's starting to slog a little bit because his innings are reaching an all-time high. If that's Emerson Hancock coming up, if that's Darren McCacken, if that's Tommy Malone, that's the only real change I would say is probably coming outside of small bullpen moves to get guys in there that can actually throw innings because you just used your optionable guys in a game the day before.
Or an injury.
Or sure,
Right.
God forbid.
The obvious, yeah.
Yeah.
So how do you think the lineup should be constructed right now?
I'm fine with the top 4 staying the same, with Cal being the 4-hitter. Number 5, I don't think Canzone should be 5. Not yet. I would probably, honestly, with Ty coming back up, maybe move Ty there or Teo, and then Canzone 6, and then either Ty or Teo 7, and then your DH if it's Murphy. It's hard because there's a lot of
Mm.
bats that are all swinging
At
at the
that
right
point,
time.
you have Canzone DHing
Oh,
unless you're putting
true.
him in left
Unless I'm putting
over
him in left for
Marlowe.
Marlowe. That's a good point. Ooh. Line of construction is getting funky because Marlowe's been playing well.
He's hitting like 293 or something like that.
Who hits yesterday? Playing decent enough defense out there, better than Canzone was in right the first game. Interesting.
Yeah, but then that means that Tom Murphy's not getting as many at bats.
Yeah.
Who's been one of your hottest hitters? So
Yeah,
what do you do in that
Canzone's
situation?
probably DHing, huh? Canzone's probably gonna hit 8. The roster was better before the Sewald trade. It made more sense.
And then I think you have Rojas hitting 9.
Yeah, no reason to
As your
not.
second baseman, Rojas or Caballero, either one. I
Mm-hmm.
don't mind Cade Marlowe in the 9 spot. I think that he kind of flips the lineup over as like a second leadoff hitter, kind of what JP was when Julio was leading off.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. The roster construction right now, it'll be interesting to see kind of how they juggle because Canzone's probably best suited as a DH. Mike Ford's best suited as a DH.
Mm-hmm.
Murphy, when Cal's catching, is the DH. So, I think that Mike Ford's probably gone, in my opinion. I would not be shocked to see Mike Ford when the Mariners come back from the Angels series. Gone. Wouldn't be shocked.
Gone, huh?
He's not providing anything right
Not
now.
providing, yeah. I feel like the bench bat idea of like a pinch hit, like Matt Stairs vibes, could be,
Well, right now he is.
I know he's not doing anything.
He's Adam Dunn, but not the fun parts of Adam Dunn.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I guess at that point you bring up Haggerty because he's hitting well down in AAA. So, yeah.
Because
The
now
Mike,
Canzone can be your backup first baseman.
yeah, and Mike Ford's reign of terror is over. It's so sad.
Yeah. And then pitching staff, I mean, nothing really changed. Thornton's in the pen now. So otherwise you got Campbell, Sweet, Saucedo, Spire, Topa, Brash, Munoz. That's really the only change there is Thornton. Your bench is still Murphy, Moore, Cabby, and Ford right now. If you think that, Canzone is DHing for you and Marlowe's playing left. So I don't know. That is the lineup. That is the roster that's going to take us to the promised land, folks.
I sure hope so.
Joe broke down the Paul Sewald trade. It's on the screen now, talking a little bit more about Canzone, Rojas, and Bliss. Be sure to check that one out. Appreciate you guys watching episode 19 of the Hit It Here podcast, and go Mariners.